How does Google crawl your website? Crawling is really the first and most fundamental part of SEO. If Google's unable to crawl your website, then nothing else matters. You may have the best content, the best images, the best products, whatever it is, but if Google can't crawl that information on your website, then it really doesn't matter because those won't be able to rank in search results if Google's unable to crawl your website. So you need to pay attention to how Google is crawling your website, and that means paying attention to every aspect of how Google crawls your website. And crawling really is complex, and there's a lot going on with it. So the very first step of the crawling process is discoverability. First and foremost, Google simply has to know that a URL exists on your website. So as Google is out crawling the web, they're constantly on the lookout for new URLs that they don't already know about. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to help Google find the URLs on your website. One of the best ways you can do that is with internal links. An internal link is a link on your website to another page contained on your website. For example, your website's homepage might link to your new blog post. Well, that link on the homepage over to the new blog post, that's a point of discoverability for Google to find that link, and then all of a sudden they'll discover that new blog post on your website. The more internal links you can have, the better. You can also use external links to help with discoverability. XML sitemaps can be another point of discoverability, as can RSS feeds. After Google discovers a URL, they add these URLs to a queue, a long list of all the URLs that they know about. And one by one, other bots from Google will go back through each of those URLs. And in this next step, the bots are trying to fetch content from those pages, trying to get the code that made up that particular web page. Now, there's some problems that can happen here. The first problem is that Google's bots can be blocked from fetching content from a page. This can happen with a robots.txt disallow statement. That robots.txt disallow statement tells Google you do not want them fetching content from this page, and Google's going to respect that. So you want to make sure that if Google's unable to fetch content from a page, that you aren't accidentally blocking them from doing so with a robots.txt disallow. Sometimes other things go wrong with fetching content from a page. There might be a technical issue that comes up. For example, your server might be down for maintenance and Google would be unable to go through and access content from your page. In other cases, there might be a glitch or problem with your website's code that isn't working properly for Google. Sometimes CDNs can accidentally block Google from accessing your website. So if Google's unable to fetch content from your website's pages, well, you want to step through and look at how Google is able to access pages on your website and make sure there's no technical problems preventing them from doing so. Now, after Google has fetched content from your website's pages, they're not done yet. At this point, all they have is a bunch of code from your website, and they need to step through that code and process that code and make sure they understand everything that they need to understand about this page. So the first thing that they'll do when processing this code is look at your website's HTML. Do they actually understand your website's HTML? Is the website's HTML complete? If there's a lot of errors in the HTML, that can make it hard for Google to be able to successfully understand what's going on with this web page and what content this web page contains. Google's also going to look at CSS on this page, see how this page is designed and presented, what content is hidden from view, what content is emphasized, what content is not emphasized. The other piece of code that Google is going to be looking at is JavaScript code. A lot of websites depend heavily on JavaScript code to load content to their website's pages. So Google is going to be on the lookout for JavaScript code while they're processing through what they've retrieved in the fetch. And if they find JavaScript code, Google is going to add that to a render queue. Now, this render queue is another long list of URLs where an additional step needs to be taken to process that JavaScript code. So other bots are going to go through that render queue, one URL at a time, and they're going to try and execute the JavaScript that's contained on that page. Google is able to execute a lot of JavaScript, but not all JavaScript on a page. And sometimes even JavaScript they should be able to execute doesn't execute correctly because of a problem in the code, because of slow speeds, because something about the JavaScript code is blocked from Google. So if Google is unable to access your JavaScript code or unable to execute your JavaScript code, you need to figure out why and what problems you need to fix to make sure Google is able to fully execute the JavaScript code on your website that's needed to see your website's content. After Google has executed as much JavaScript as they can on your website, they are then going to have a more complete understanding of your website's content, a more complete understanding of what all is contained on this page. And at that point, the crawling is complete. As you can see, there's a lot going on with this process. Google has to discover pages. They have to fetch content from those pages. They have to process the content and the code that was found on those pages. And in a lot of cases, they have a lot of extra steps to take with processing because of that JavaScript code. So each step of the way, you need to make sure that Google is able to work with your website's content and code and server configuration to successfully crawl your website. If you have any questions about how Google is crawling your website, or if you're running into any problems with how Google is crawling your website and need help figuring those out, please let me know. You can email me at matthew@elementive.com. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it from Elementive, please subscribe. Thank you for watching.